Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we tackle a single relevant question based on our Bible reading for that day. This week our reading is centered around the book of Philippians, and today I'm joined by Sheryl Daughety and Chris Rexroad. So we're going to look at a question from Philippians chapter 2. Our reading was verses 14 through 18. And he says, "Do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you." I think that these are two kinds of people. The complainers and the arguers are two different people. I'm one, not the other. How do we avoid complaining and arguing? And what does this apply to? Do we never complain? Do we never argue? Or is he only speaking about something?
Probably the unproductive, unnecessary stuff that just keeps people busy for no real reason, or tearing down relationships.
Yeah, because he follows it up by saying, so that no one can criticize you, which makes us assume that he's suggesting if you do those things, it does give people a reason to find fault in you, especially as a Christian.
Like what? I mean, what are unproductive and unnecessary things that we find ourselves complaining about or arguing about?
Color of paint.
You mean things that don't matter?
Temperature in the church.
You act like you've heard these.
Oh my goodness!
complaints, Chris.
I'm going to use the C word that I'm not allowed to use. In past, we had committees upon committees upon committees to determine things that were just should have just been like almost like an executive decision, or just a group of people from the staff or something. Decision, move on, get it done.
I wouldn't always say that arguing is useless. I don't know. I mean, but some people consider things arguing that I don't consider arguing too. Like to just...
That's the similarities in our personality.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just because...
That was not an argument.
Yes, we were discussing it, and now we're done talking about it.
Now we're done discussing it.
Yes. Right? I don't know. I feel like, the complaining thing, we recently did something in leadership where, with the staff, where you talked about like the two different scenarios that would bring about complaining. Like either, I'm trying to remember what it was. Either you didn't take it to the right person, or there was one other scenario. I'm trying to remember what it was.
We were talking about the two things that happen is we can have a conversation and it gets sidetracked.
Yeah.
And
right.
And we never bring it back. And the person who brought the thing to the
feels
table,
like nobody heard them.
Who nobody cares. And that wasn't the case. We just got over here talking about something that was more exciting for a certain group of people, and it didn't get. The other one was somebody drops the ball. They don't follow through on their job, and that happens. All of us do it from time to time. But instead of that person being addressed, we do one of two things. We talk to whoever's nearby, so we complain to them, or we make some kind of general complaint that nobody has any idea that they're talking to us. That was direct. It was directed at one person in the room, but it could have been 300 other people. The complaint is so general. And
the reason this comes to mind is because I was thinking about that day, and I thought, well, there's a third scenario, which is the one I find is the thing that makes me feel like I want to complain, is when I have confronted that person about whatever the issue is more than once, and it's just a continual,
right? It never changes.
Promise that things will get better, but they never do. And I've experienced that multiple times too, and that I think that gets super frustrating. And to me, that's the most likely place for people to complain, is when they feel like either they're not heard or nobody cares. So they start looking for other people to listen to it because the person that should have listened probably didn't.
I'd also say if it falls in this category where somebody complains about something that's for their personal benefit, but not necessarily for the benefit of, if we're talking about church, for the group of people that congregate there. If you're asking for something that's just something that you would like to see that makes you feel more comfortable or something, but it's not for everybody else, I think something like that's just in the category of unnecessary complaints.
I think we all know people too who, like, if they're breathing,
They're complaining.
they're
Yeah.
Complaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. So, one, I typically find myself being tone deaf to those people.
Mhm.
Like all I hear, yeah, because I know when they start talking. Now, the danger in that is that occasionally that person says something that does need to be addressed. That that it is semi-productive. And so, if you completely tune them out, you miss some of the good things. The most, and complaining, I think we miss in Scripture the severity of how God views complaining. I mean, you can go back to Exodus when they left Egypt. The grumbling and complaining is what drove God crazy.
He's like, just go back out to the desert and die.
Right. I think that's what he would rather have.
Yeah.
Moses certainly felt that way. And then when God turns on him, he's like, no, please don't. I love them. They're my complainer.
Well, he was also concerned about like the nations around there hearing about this God
Right.
that rescued them.
Yeah, but he acts like God don't already know that.
Know.
God, I'm sure you hadn't thought about this.
Yeah.
But the hardest complaints for me are complaints where people either don't want a solution or they don't want to be a part of the solution.
Don't want to do the work to get there.
Right. And so this is stereotypical and isn't always the case, but stereotypically they will tell you that men tend to be fixers. And sometimes when your wife is talking to you, she's not looking for you to fix it. She's just wanting to tell you the problem. And that's really hard for me. Like, because I want to fix the problem. All right, well, here's what you need to do. I didn't ask you what I needed to do. I just wanted to tell you that I was struggling with this. So I wrestle with that. That's this concept, though, of I'm always going to complain and I'm not going to be a part of the solution is very difficult as a leader in the church, in a business, where somebody is constantly saying, we need to change this. Why don't we do this? Why didn't you do that? Why can't you try this? And then, there, I could think of things. I can think of people who would say, who have said, we should do Wednesday night services. Well, we do now. I can think of a person who I heard that probably from them 15 times. And I don't think I've seen them one time in the whatever, it's been a couple of years now since we started it back. I don't think I've seen them once. Like, well, why were you bringing this? Why was this? Was this so important if you're not going to be here? And I see those things frequently in people, and I don't want to just say it in church because I see it in business. I see it in the community. I see people who complain about things that they have no willingness to fix the problem, none whatsoever. They don't want to be a part of the solution. They just want to point out the problem. And I just don't think that's a spiritual gift. The arguing piece on the other side, well, let's back up. I do think that there are times complaints are beneficial. Complaints and complaining, though, aren't the same thing. I don't think that I view them different. The same is true about arguing. I think there are times, and some of this is my personality, there are times that arguing something out is extremely beneficial to me because people are passionate. That's one of the things I want to see from somebody anyways, some passion. If you don't have passion about it, it ain't worth doing, That's how I feel about it, And so I want to see somebody's passion. I want to see their heart, That's one thing arguing will do, is it reveals somebody's heart really, really quickly. What is it that they're after? Because I have, and because, let me give you an example just from my personal. There have been times I was in an argument and the only thing I wanted to do was win and them lose. Period. That was the only thing I was after. But there have been other times where I felt like I was just trying, I was genuinely pushing for the best idea, and they were pushing for the best idea. And in the end, I felt like that's what we came up with, was the best idea, whatever that looked like. And I think there's a difference when you're arguing just to win or to hurt somebody or to feel superior.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad motive. When there's something at stake, and there are times we have some heated discussions in staff where we're trying to figure out, everybody's passionate, everybody wants something or don't want something, whatever the case may be. I was thinking, I'm not even going to bring it up on the podcast, but I was thinking about something that we have argued about numerous times. And I thought, golly, I look back on it now and I go, that was ridiculous. You're in charge of it now.
Yeah.
It's yours. And
There's no telling.
And you're getting ready to have to deal with it. Yeah, you know what.
Yep.
See, now everybody's like, what are they talking about?
Mm-hmm. No, nobody's arguing or complaining about it anymore.
Exactly. The reason we were arguing about it is because everybody who was in charge of it didn't want to do it.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, because my experience last year was like, wait a second, that wasn't so bad. But if people were complaining, I didn't hear it. That
Right.
may be the difference.
Or you didn't care.
Which may be why I didn't hear it. I wouldn't care.
Are there things worth arguing about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like?
We're talking about in church or just in life in general?
In general.
I would say a definite understanding of your relationship with your spouse as far as what's expected, what's acceptable, and the two of you working those things out.
And I would say, like, in the church world, if you see something that you believe is wrong happening, and the person who's doing it believes it's right, then it needs to be discussed.
And not an idea. You're talking about, I'm assuming, morality.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Issues of morality.
Mm-hmm. Which is probably going to bring on an argument.
Yeah.
Chances
It can.
are. Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, you get defensive. You talked about in marriage. I remember sitting down with a couple one time, and they were telling me how bad their marriage was, and they fought all the time. And I'm not saying fighting is not toxic. I said, there's hope. I said, because if you're fighting, at least there's some passion.
Mm-hmm. Still trying.
Yeah, there's some passion there. The people that scare me the most are the people who have just shut down, don't care, like they're done, they're not arguing anymore. They've checked out. If you're still arguing, you're in the game. You're trying to figure something out. Are you an arguer, Chris?
If it's really important, generally, no. I'm more of a let's come to a common solution. Peacekeeper, probably.
You're not a peacekeeper.
Oh, come on now. I think I am sometimes. I wouldn't say I'm somebody who's like out to argue all the time.
No. I don't think so. But there are probably people on the outside of you who think you were mad or arguing, and you won't. You said at the beginning of this, I won't argue. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Who have a different type of personality, I think. I am sure I rub people the wrong way sometimes.
That's the thing I get, because sometimes I've walked away from a conversation and the other person felt extremely wounded. And I was just like, okay, we just had a conversation. And I just said what needed to be said. And they took it as an argument. But for me, it was just, okay, it wasn't like I raised my voice or I said anything hurtful. I just said, this is A, B, C, D. This is where I'm coming from. And there are people that if you do not 100% agree with them, they believe you're trying to argue with them, and that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge. Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us tomorrow as we continue our conversation around the book of Philippians.